Okay, we can get going. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the New Bedford Whaling Museum. My name is Amanda McMullen. I'm the president and CEO here at the Whaling Museum. It's such a pleasure to welcome you for this conversation tonight and welcome a number of folks who are Zooming in from home. But I really want to thank those of you who are here in person because it is so lovely to see you all after these long 2 years. So thank you for coming. We are so pleased to host this discussion and obviously have José Cabral here with us today. Thank you so much. Connecting the really important dots and deep connections that are all things New Bedford, Cabo Verde, and whaling. So we're looking forward to this conversation. I want to thank especially the New Bedford Whaling Museum's Cape Verdean Advisory Committee. I know we've got Jean Montero, who's one of our co-chairs here and board member at the Whaling Museum. So thank you always, Jean, and the committee for your special support. And Dr. Almeida, where would we be without you and your whirlwind activity to pull these things together? So Carlos, thank you so much. Before turning it to Carlos, I just want to let you all know we have a fantastic new exhibit that's just opened up at the Whaling Museum called The Azorian Spirit, which is celebrating the art of Domingos Rebelo. Come back, it's right on the first floor. It just opened last week with much fanfare. This is an extraordinary display of private works from the Rebelo family. It was co-curated by the artist's grandson, George Rebelo. It's extraordinary to look at. Another important connection between New Bedford and the Azores. So beautiful works, and we hope you'll come back. And be sure to check out the Whaling Museum's website because we have programs all the time. So if you love tonight, check out the website and come back for more. So without further ado, Carlos, I will bring you up and get the show on the road. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Boa tarde. My name is Carlos Almeida. I'm professor of Portuguese and the director of the Luso Centro and the coordinator of the Portuguese-English Community Interpreting Certificate at Bristol Community College. I would like to, of course, before we start, to take this opportunity to thank Amanda McMullen, President and CEO of the New Bedford Whaling Museum, and her staff for providing us with this special space for this event. A special thank you goes to the Cabo Verdean Advisory Committee of the New Bedford Whaling Museum. Of course, Amanda already mentioned Jean Montero here. Also, we have Angelo Barbosa, which is a double role as a member also of the Cape Verdean New Bedford Advisory Committee, but also as the director of the Pitt Pierce Institute for Cape Verdean Studies at Bridgewater State University. A heartfelt thank you to my friend Tony Suarez and his staff from the Inner Bay restaurant for providing the appetizers that you tasted outside. Wasn't it good? I think there are some left there, so you can partake afterwards, okay? A special mention to the Luso Centro usual collaborators, the Cape Verdean Association in New Bedford, of course, represented by its president, Darlene Spencer, Jan Baptiste, vice president. I see Giovanni Sequeira also. So, and Angelo Barbosa also is part of the Cape Verdean Association, New Bedford. And of course, Pet Pires Institute for Cabo Verdean Studies at Bridgewater State University, the Center for Portuguese Studies and Culture, Tagus Press at UMass Dartmouth, and the group Pache Parloa USA, represented here by Dani Cabral, who is the brother of the author that we are hosting. This event would have not been possible without a generous support from the Camões Institute. Lastly, a special thanks to all of you for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us on this weekday, whether in person or online. I would mention also that this event is being recorded. I would also like to recognize a few other people in the audience. Dr. Rogério Lopes, Consul of Portugal in New Bedford, State Representative David Vieira, and Associate Dean for Arts and Humanities at Bristol Community College, Dr. Avis Rupert, for your presence. Thank you for coming, for being here with us. The presentation of the book, Acushnet Avenue, Pelos Caminhos de Chiquinho, was to be done by our friend and journalist, Pedro Bicudo from Washington, D.C., who unfortunately could not be here, but provided the translation, which we are very grateful. I have solicited support from my good friend, Benvindo Cruz, to present the book in English and to serve as an interpreter during the Q&A session. After the presentation, I will come back to introduce the author, José Cabral, who will answer your questions at the end. At this time, I will call Benvindo to come and present the book.
Good evening. You guys hear me properly? So it is an honor. It is with a great joy and responsibility, quite a responsibility for me to present this book in English. So we shall begin. All right, it goes as follows. Acushnet Avenue, along the paths of Chiquinho, a Cabo Verdean novel celebrating the bicentennial of the USA of the, I'm going to switch, this is faltering. Let me take my other screen. That's much better, I believe. So once I will restart. Acushnet Avenue, along the path of Chiquinho, a Cabo Verdean novel celebrating the bicentennial of the USA Cabo Verde consular relations, which the bicentennial is referring to 1818 to 2018. All right, so for 2 centuries, the San Antonio ground in the Cabo Verdean waters was a favorite for international whaling fleets, especially for the New England whalers. The large numbers of Yankee whaling vessels calling Cabo Verde led the American government to open in 1818 a consular representation for support of the whaling business and crews. As a result of this long historical interaction of at least 257 years, referring to 1765 to 2022 to current, Cape Verdeans became a frequent presence aboard American whalers. Cyclical hunger as major force for migration. Historically, the Cape Verdean archipelago has been repeatedly devastated by cyclical famines and droughts. These circumstances led farmers who lived in the mountains to protect themselves from pirates to descend to the shores in search of food. There, they would encounter North American whalers anchored in the bays to replenish fresh water stocked up on fresh produce. Whalers would sail the 7 seas after whales, hunting and taking the blubber to boil and extract oil. Along their multi-year journey, crews would take advantage of refreshing at ports or call to carry repairs and maintenance. Life aboard was very harsh and payment scarce. Recruiting able seamen was difficult. So whalers would set sail from New Bedford with incomplete crews for later adjustment during stopovers. Azores and Cape Verde were 2 manpower favorites. As both archipelagos, young men were eager to jump aboard for the opportunity of leaving the islands, some without any affinity with the sea. But pushed by hunger and servitude, these young men would approach the whaling boats out of necessity to go to work on board in exchange for food. Drawn like butterflies to an uncertain light, attracted like butterflies by this uncertain light beyond, these young men would offer themselves to compose their crews in search of a very distant promise. In search of a very distant promised land, America. Embarking on the rocky shores of Cape Verde, it was just the start of a long and strenuous journey. The whalers would head to the Pacific and the South Seas for 1, 2, 3, or more years of whaling until finally reaching New England, sometimes California, to unload their harvest. Some settled on land as cranberry pickers on Cape Cod or textile workers in the mills. They would send for their families and started family reunification, thus initiating a major and prolonged Cape Verdean migratory flux to the United States. If some settled, others did well with life on the waves. They made a whaling career at the expense of audacity and hard work, became expert harpooners and officials at the whale boats or whale schooners, later rising to officers and captains. We shall continue, shall we not? This is a fascinating story, people. In Cape Verde, dollars started to arrive from savings in America. Clothing and even food came from the promised land. In years of hunger, families found relief on such supplies. Some families will never receive a thing. Their immigrant relatives too frequently perished in whaling accidents, sometimes a capsized boat in a storm, or an enraged leviathan shattering the whale boat, or it disappeared violently toward a fleeing whale, never to be seen again. As if the end of whaling era wasn't enough, came the Great Depression. Many Caribbeans were pushed back. Many Caribbeans were pushed back to where they came from, with what little they had amassed. Others, despite the hard work and miserable life, took the risk and remained in the United States. The ones naturalized started to benefit from labor rights and retirement. Some returned to the islands loaded with dollars, and despite being old, ended up marrying young girls and having children, who in turn, like their mothers, obtained citizenship and became Americans. To whom the Depression had forced to return to Cabo Verde years before, invested their little savings in farms and livestock, only to be faced with the same historical predicament of scarce rain and drought. Once at arrival, they were rich Americans, in quotes. We say Americans in Cabo Verde. Whenever you go to the US, you are American. But after a few years, would find themselves back in misery. Most tried to return to America, but changes in immigration laws or regulations closed the entrance door. Acushnet Avenue, the book that Balthazar wanted but could not write. Balthazar Lopes, author of Chiquinho, intended to write a continuation novel, to which he even chose the title Acushnet Avenue. Note Michel Laban, that's a French name Carlos told me, so Michel Laban, refers that Balthazar was not able to write it mostly due to barriers imposed on travel to US, placed by the political police of the fascist regime of Salazar. It would narrate the history and collective memory of the Cabo Verdean people immigrating to America in a fictional way. It would follow, the life journey of a young man called Chiquinho, who and his father and grandfather sees immigration as the only option for survival. With writer José Cabral takes on the challenge and risk of continuing the story from Chiquinho's departure to America exactly at the end of this homonymous original novel. As it goes, one afternoon in 1930, at the age of 20 or 20 years old, Chiquinho boarded the boat Atalanta, coming from the island of Brava en route to America. He boards from Preguiça on the island of San Nicolau, heading northwest towards America, watching the island fade away on the horizon. Here's what the book says. After 29 days, some entirely blue, others gray, Atalanta continued her daily struggle against the ocean, sometimes gently caressing it, others slashing her humped back with the bow to make way for the rushing, to make way, my apologies, I gotta take this, to make way when the rushing wind galloped wildly. Dad was waiting for me anxiously at the pier. He let out a cry when he recognized me. Francisco, my son, your blessing, Daddy. They moved to 102 South 2nd Street. A rediscovery of Chiquinho through the hands of José J. Cabral, José J. Cabral. 72 years later, another San Nicolouense decided to fulfill Balthazar Lopes' wish, writing the novel that he could not write, through which he produced a portrait of Cabo Verdean immigration to the USA. At the same time, the book reveals not only the importance of the seas of Cabo Verde, known as San Antonio Ground, but above all, it rescues the extraordinary role of Cape Verdeans in one of the most influential American industries at the time, as revealed by Professor Donald Warren in his no less extraordinary book on the Portuguese presence. Now it says, versus Cape Verdean and Azorean in American whaling. One moment, please. My mouth is dry. Thank you. The publication of Acushnet Avenue took place in 2019, the year in which, in the USA and Cape Verde, 200 years of consular relations were celebrated, once again referring to 1818 to 2018. The New Bedford Whaling Museum opens at the museum, at the Museu de Pesca, the Cabo Verde, the Cape Verdean Fisheries Museum, an exhibition of whaling, The inaugural of this exhibition in St. Nicolau marked the official closing of the bicentennial celebration by the American ambassador in Cape Verde. The book launch of Acushnet Avenue took place at an honorable reception by the American Embassy in Praia. We'll dive into misadventures. One moment, please. Okay, that is correct. Did I miss? One moment, please. I didn't number the pages. Okay, Carlos, I think you should assist me here. That. Yes, that's what I was at. Okay, that's the one. All right. Once again, I do apologize. There is no number on the page. It's quite confusing, and they're like both sides. He assisted me, and I thank you, Carlos. Dr. Carlos, or just, I don't call him Dr. Carlos. I call him just Carlos Almeida, PhD. All right. The book rescues the common heritage of a people of Cape Verde and the United States, a tiny archipelagic nation and a giant one, based on the sharing of the adversities experienced in Castelo da Proa. Tragedies, storms, poor food, desertion and riots, sodomy and mistreatment. It also contains some of the history of one of the pioneering American experiences in meritocracy. For it was the first in American history that Blacks were promoted to exercise hierarchical superiority over whites based on courage and skill as harpooners, officers, and captains. Chiquinho, who arrived in the US when whaling was already over, ascends to captain of a ship, of a merchant ship, and makes a mint or his mark. However, struck by tragedy, he decides to return to his homeland. At 52, he returns to Cabo Verde as a rich immigrant. There, he invests his savings on a printing press, on a printing shop, and finds success again. More than money, he carries the American culture, many books, the English language, a sense of entrepreneurship. He employs a lot of people and helps the needy. Anyone who reads Acushnet Avenue will take a literary journey through Cape Verdean immigration in America, while being part of a bicentennial celebration of consular relations between the US and Cabo Verde. We'll discover how, via America, the doors of the world were opened to Cabo Verde starting the first Cape Verdean migratory process. We'll understand how the migration was providential to overcome crises of drought and famine that cyclically devastated the Cabo Verde archipelago via remittances that helped entire families. We'll dive into the misadventures of those who, forced to leave America in the midst of the Great Depression, faced serious difficulties when the drought returns and fiercely devastates the islands in the 40s. One will also get to know defeats and difficulties in adapting to migrant life, the almost slave life migrants led in the whalers' forecastles. Mental alienation, the desertions from abusive life aboard, the drama experienced by Cape Verdeans during the American recession, the marginal charity-dependent homeless life of some who stayed, the sad and glorious return of some, the restart of life in Cabo Verde, the misery knocking at their door when drought hit and the dollars ran out. The contribution of a small people to the American whaling economy, recognized labor, incidentally portrayed by Melville in Moby Dick. The notorious performance of Cape Verdeans aboard American whalers, from ship boy to the highest rank in hierarchy, captain. As captain. The stories of about 20 Cape Verdeans who rose to whaling captainship. American presence in culture, families, and part of Cape Verde's history. How much America influenced Chiquinho's civic and political formation. The values of liberty and democracy incorporated by him during his stay in America. Cabo Verde independence process. Chiquinho's discreet contribution to the political emancipation of the archipelago. Some of the events that follow independence. I thank you for your attention. It has been a pleasure and an honor. Carlos Almeida will follow, I believe. Certainly.
Thank you, Ben. Thank you, Ben, for that great presentation.
My pleasure and delight.
I also don't call him Bem-vindo, I call him Ben. And by the way, Ben is a great artist, singer, poet. So we will invite him other times to sing with his beautiful voice.
Thank you.
It gives me great pleasure and honor to now introduce to you my friend and Patricio José Joaquim Cabral. Like me, José Cabral was born in San Nicolau. We both studied in high school in São Vicente, and we both were recruited to serve in the military. After the military service and high school, I immigrated to the United States, and Cabral went to Brazil to study business administration. We lost contact from many years, but back in 2010, he had published a short story book, Saudade de Minha Terra, San Nicolau, which has seen 3 editions, and wanted to come to the States to present it in the book, the Cape Verdean communities, and was inquiring if they knew someone who could help in promoting the book. They told him that there was this Cabo Verdean guy working at Bristol Community College, Luso Centro, who promotes activities that has to do with Portuguese-speaking countries. When he found out it was me, he said, wow, that's my long time lost friend. Needless to say, I organized the presentation of the book both at Bristol Community College and at the Cabo Verdean community in Pawtucket, Rhode Island. Since then, Cabral has published several books. Among those, Padre Gesualdo Fiorini, Italiano de São Nicolau, Cidadão, a biography of Father Gesualdo in 2007, with an Italian translation in 2011. The novel Caminhos que Trilharam in 2014, which he came back in 2016 to present the book here at the museum and in the Cabo Verdean communities in Waterbury and Bridgeport, Connecticut. And the book is part of the trilogy that includes the book that Bem-vindo so eloquent just presented to us, Acushnet Avenue, Pelos Caminhos de Chiquinho, which was published in 2011. It has an extensive curriculum, but I'm gonna just mention a few more things about him, and then I'm gonna call him to come sit next to Bem-vindo. José has collaborated as a researcher on the documentary films O Velho Caminheiro and Cabo Verde, Uma História Submersa. He is also a member of the Cape Verdean Advisory Committee of the New Bedford Whaling Museum. He studied heritage museology and development at the University of the Açores. He is currently chairman of the board of directors at Escola do Mar in Mindelo, São Vicente. In 2021, he was awarded the Arnaldo França Literary Prize, sponsored by the Portuguese national press, Casa da Moeda. Please help me welcome José Cabral, who will say a few words, and then we will get into the Q&A sessions.
Boa noite. Yeah.
Good evening.
Poucas palavras apenas em português.
Very small words, only in Portuguese, small amount of words.
Prefiro assim com a excelente introdução do Bem-vindo para poder entender melhor aquilo que eu tenho a dizer.
I prefer to say with the excellent translation of Bem-vindo.
Primeiro para agradecer ao museu, na pessoa da doutora Amanda, que eu estou a conhecer hoje pessoalmente.
And also I would like to thank the museum of Dr. Amanda, whom I've met today personally.
Por me acolherem nesta casa de cultura americana, uma cultura que é também cabo-verdiana.
To have embraced me, welcomed me in this house of this culture of heritage and American, which is also Cape Verdean.
Agradecimento muito especial ao meu amigo professor Carlos Almeida.
And also a special thank you, immense gratitude to the Professor Carlos Almeida, a friend of mine.
Que dinamiza sempre as minhas vindas para os Estados Unidos.
Whom always organizes me coming to the United States.
ao Comitê Consultivo do Museu, Cabo Verdeano do Museu,
and also with the committee, the advisors of the Cape Verdeans here in the museum, the Cape Verdean Advisory Board here in the museum.
aqui representado pelo Sr. Jim Monteiro, que eu descobri agora mesmo, é meu familiar.
Which is here represented by Jim Monteiro, whom I just met here today, and whom is also my family.
E naturalmente todos vocês que se dignaram a comparecer hoje num dia de semana normal.
And also I would like to thank all of you who made your time, who just made your way here today, which is a weekday.
A apresentação deste livro aqui era obrigatória.
The presentation of this book here was an obligation.
Mais da metade da história do livro acontece aqui em New Bedford.
More than half of the history, the scenarios in the book took place here in New Bedford.
Nesta cidade que acolheu muitos cabo-verdianos na indústria da baleia, mas também na indústria têxtil.
In the city which welcomed many Cape Verdeans here in the whaling industry and also in textile mills or factories.
Entre os quais o meu avô, que teve a casa arrastada pelo mar aqui.
Among whom my grandfather, whom has his house that was basically driven to the sea.
E que teve dedo cortado numa fábrica têxtil aqui em New Bedford.
And whom also had a finger, amputated here, one of the textile mills in New Bedford.
Eu tenho a assinalar duas coisas rapidamente que já foram ditas aqui, mas eu gostaria de reforçar.
I have to highlight two things that have been said here already, but I would like to emphasize them.
É a circunstância tanto quanto insólita de uma micronação como Cabo Verde.
It's a circumstance of a country, a micro country like Cape Verde,
ter dado uma grande contribuição a país poderoso como é os Estados Unidos.
having given such great contribution to a mighty power, a great power like the United States.
Já foi dito aqui, durante mais de 5 anos, estudei profundamente a indústria baleeira americana.
For more than 5 years, I have studied profoundly the whaling industry in the United States.
E o que eu encontrei lá é que, sobretudo nos últimos 50 anos de avaliação, os cabo-verdianos e os açorianos foram os grandes protagonistas desta indústria.
And what I discovered was that on the last 50 years of the whaling industry, Cape Verdeans and Azorians were great protagonists in this industry.
Que tornou, numa certa altura do ano, saberão, New Bedford, uma das cidades mais ricas da América, através da venda do óleo da baleia.
That it eventually contributed to New Bedford being once upon a time one of the richest cities in the world due to the oil of whaling industry.
Deveria assinar aqui que nós estamos perante uma grande história.
And I would like to highlight here that we're waiting for so great history,
que precisa ser devidamente conhecida.
Which has to be properly understood or known.
E eu devo mais uma vez agradecer ao Museu da Baleia.
And I once again would like to thank the Whaling Museum,
que foi abrir em Cabo Verde uma exposição sobre esta temática para nós cabo-verdianos conhecermos a nossa história.
Which opened in Cape Verde an exhibition on this theme for us Cape Verdeans, for us to know better our history, to better know our history.
Por estranho que possa parecer, essa história não é tão conhecida como isso em Cabo Verde.
As strange as it may seem, this story is not well known in Cape Verde.
Então o museu está a dar uma grande contribuição a nós cabo-verdianos. É o Museu da Baleia que foi nos ensinar a nossa história em Cabo Verde.
So the Whaling Museum is giving a great contribution. The Whaling Museum went to Cape Verde to teach us our history.
E eu deixo aqui a promessa de voltar aqui, não sei quando, mas proximamente, com o livro traduzido em inglês.
And with you, I leave my promise of returning here with the book translated into English.
Eu recomendaria até lá que procurassem 2 livros extraordinários que estão à venda aqui nos Estados Unidos.
And until then, I suggest that you seek 2 books that are being sold here in the US.
Que são So and This Day, do professor Donald Warren.
Eu peço desculpas, pode
So
repetir?
and This Day,
One of them is So and This Day, the king,
do professor Donald Warren.
by Professor Donald Warren.
E o mais recente que é Capitães de Cor, Whaling, Captains of Colors.
Okay, and the most recent one, pode dizer, pode falar?
Capitães de Cor.
The coro, okay, Captains of Chorus.
Yeah. The Skip Finlay.
Espera.
Capitães Baleeiros de Cor. Whaling Captains of Colors. The Skip
I guess
Finlay.
that's English right there. Sorry. I don't want to ruin that.
São 2 livros extraordinários que comprovam aquilo que eu acabei de dizer aqui.
There are 2 extraordinary books that corroborate what I have just said here.
Que os cabo-verdianos foram presentes extraordinários na avaliação americana.
The Cape Verdeans were an extraordinary presence in the whaling in the United States.
E que, segundo este senhor Finlay, pela primeira vez na história dos Estados Unidos, havia homens de cor a mandarem em brancos.
And according to this gentleman, Mr. Finlay, sir, nome? Finlay. And it was the first time that blacks ascended above whites in the United States in that specific industry.
Foi dito aqui, mas eu gostaria também de reforçar.
It was said here, but I also would like to reinforce or emphasize.
Até 1975, Cabo Verde foi uma colônia de Portugal.
Until 1975, Cape Verde was a colony of Portugal.
Chiquinho e Baltasar Lopes são 2 pessoas que, de algum modo, contribuíram para a emancipação política de Cabo Verde.
Chiquinho, Baltasar Lopes are 2 people that contributed to the emancipation of Cape Verde.
E muito dessa influência foram daqui dos Estados Unidos.
And the majority of this influence stemmed from the United States.
Viveram num país livre, democrático e conseguiram transferir isso para Cabo Verde.
They lived in a free democratic country and they were able to transfer this to Cape Verde.
Permitam, no mês de abril, em que o Baltasar Lopes completaria 115 anos,
And if you allow me, in the month of April, where Baltasar would have turned 115 years old,
fazer uma homenagem a este grande cabo-verdiano,
allow me to pay homage to this great Cape Verdean,
que, como foi dito aqui, quis vir nos anos 50, morar em New Bedford.
As was said here, he wanted to come in the 1950s to come and reside here in New Bedford.
Para colher inspiração para escrever este livro, que ele já tinha escolhido o nome, Acushnet Avenue, é de Baltasar.
For him to be able to gather information or inspiration for him to write this book, which he had already decided on the title, Acushnet Avenue.
Portanto, eu queria dedicar este momento a este cabo-verdiano, que é considerado um homem arquipélago que esteve na linha de todas as batalhas para Cabo Verde.
Who is considered a man in the archipelago who was in line with all the battles for Cape Verde.
Muito obrigado.
Thank you very much.
Now we have the mic for questions, comments from the audience.
Agora podem fazer perguntas, se quiserem. Só podem fazer perguntas, só de querer. Algum voluntário, alguma pessoa que queira fazer pergunta?
Ele fala crioulo direto.
Precisamente.
I'm sorry. Zé Carlos, obrigado pelo excelente trabalho à volta de um tema tão importante quanto isso, né? E à volta de um personagem que é incontornável na história de Cabo Verde.
Não. Não, não, não.
Está a responder?
Ainda traduziu por falar, tá bem?
Yeah.
Ok, continua. Ao começar.
Zé Carlos, minha questão é o seguinte, eu tinha falado também direto assunto, mas aquela história relativamente à imigração, a importância e até de imigração cabo-verdiana ali nos Estados Unidos, é que nós na Cabo Verde nunca te conchegamos. E eu queria olhar para o que pensar sobre isso, para modo de cabo-verdianos que imigram para São Tomé, por exemplo, nunca se conta a história de aquela tragédia que se passa a essas famílias. Como que você percebe isso em relação à não passagem desse trauma que fica na cabeça de cabo-verdianos com assuntos relacionados à imigração e tudo aquele fenômeno que o Cabo de explica? I wish I could say this in English.
Must I?
Yeah, just
Must I?
Can I say just in English what I
Oh,
said?
go right
Just a-
ahead. Go right ahead.
He said something that's very important, that in Cape Verde, we don't know the story about Cape Verdeans in America. That's true. But there is something that happens about Cape Verdeans that went to São Tomé e Príncipe and they came back. They never tell the story to their own families. So my sense, and other people say the same, that they don't want to transfer the pain and the trauma to their own family. So we don't know the story probably because of this issue. So I'm asking him his thought about this phenomenon.
E eu acredito que esses temas são tabus.
I believe that these topics are taboos.
E é quase natural do ser humano não se expor.
It's almost natural of us, of human, to not basically expose to say, talk about
Quando as questões são sensíveis e desagradáveis.
when the topic is highly sensible and kind of like awkward and not quite good.
E eu, em alguns momentos das minhas investigações, estive aqui há alguns dias no museu em 2016, cheguei a ficar chocado.
And in my investigations, I was here in 2016 and I was shocked.
A ideia que nós temos é do imigrante chegar bem sucedido, com dinheiro e tudo isso.
The idea that we have is an immigrant to come here and basically just make a lot of money and basically have success.
Mas, sobretudo na época da avaliação, nós encontramos é que era um trabalho escravo.
But what we discovered is that during the whaling industry, it was basically a slave. It was like slave-like labor.
O famoso Castelo da Proa, onde viviam os marinheiros,
The famous Castelo de Proa, where all the seamen lived,
era um lugar imundo, baratas, ratos, comida podre.
it was a very dirty place, and there was like roaches, rats. It was very dirty.
E na maior parte das vezes, quando o barco regressava ao porto, não lhes cabia um dólar sequer.
And majority of the times when the boat would basically come to land, and sometimes they would not even have $1 to their name.
Há questões como mortes a bordo,
There have been cases like deaths on board.
naturalmente sepultados no mar,
Naturally, they were buried on the sea.
acidentes,
Accidents,
mas havia também agressões sexuais.
but there also was sexual aggression, rapes.
E eu fiquei algo triste, deparei com um cabo-verdiano nas costas do Brasil, foi pego a violar um outro marinheiro.
And I was very sad that basically that the Cape Verdean was found that he was raping another seaman.
Mas havia também pedofilia a bordo.
But then they all was like, pedophilia.
Sido e tratado de alguma forma quase escondida.
So the pedophilism was like almost treated as something hidden.
Mas quase todos os capitães tinham a bordo um garoto apoiante de cabine, que não digo todos os casos, mas em muitos casos eram violados.
But like all the captains had like in their cabin like almost a boy with them. In most cases they were raped.
Naturalmente que essa parte da história não interessa contar.
Naturally, the part of this story one does not interest telling about.
E é nossa obrigação, nós, vocês, a associação, promover o conhecimento real daquilo que se passou nessa história toda.
But it is our obligation, you guys, the association, for you guys to promote what exactly took place in the situations.
Há momento extraordinário também que eu próprio não conhecia.
There's also an extraordinary moment that I did not even know.
E é quando a depressão americana, a grande depressão americana, em que os imigrantes cabo-verdianos foram à miséria.
It was during the Great Depression that some Cabo Verdean immigrants just basically went bankrupt.
Muitos quiseram voltar, nem sequer tinham condições para voltar para Cabo Verde.
Many desired to return, but they had no financial means for them to be able to.
Perderam as casas, perderam tudo o que tinham.
They lost.
Morar nas favelas.
My apologies. They lost their houses and all of their belongings, all that they had. They actually went to live like almost in shelters.
Isto é uma parte da nossa história também cabo-verdiana chocante, que felizmente nós estamos a tentar contar através do nosso museu em Cabo Verde e que eu sei, o nosso comitê está a tentar também contar. Aliás, a razão da minha presença aqui.
This is a very shocking story, which is part of our Cabo Verdean history that the committee and the museum in Cabo Verde is attempting to tell.
Next.
Próximo. Ou próxima.
Hi, good evening, everybody. I'll say it in both in English and Portuguese. You said that the story was the Balthazar vision, was what he lived, what he survived here in the United States in Acushnet Avenue, and then he transferred to the book and somehow end up with you. O senhor disse, contou aqui, não é, que o livro era a visão do Balthazar, não é? E que de alguma forma foi a vivência dele aqui nos Estados Unidos, na Acushnet Avenue, e que de alguma forma chegou às suas mãos para escrever o livro. Eu gostaria de saber um bocadinho mais, conta-me algo mais, como é que foi essa transferência da vivência do Chiquinho até chegar nas suas mãos. I would like to know a little bit more. Just, I'm curious about how the story ended up in your hands and how the transfer was done. Thank you.
Balthazar não chegou a escrever o livro.
Balthazar did not get to write the book.
Ele quis vir aqui, tinha alguma informação, ele disse isso a um professor da Universidade da Sorbonne, que ele tinha alguma informação recolhida junto dos baleeiros que iam.
He said that he wanted to come here. He told a professor at Sorbonne, and that there was some information that he wanted to collect that someone had.
Mas ele não chegou a escrever nada. O que eu escrevi foi um bocado ficcionar aquilo que eu estudei na prática, aquilo que o Balthazar queria vir cá conhecer, eu conheci. Então ficcionei essa história. Isso aqui é uma ficção minha.
So this is basically a fictional story that I created. I basically, according to the information that I got, and so what I think, what he was trying to do, and so I created this fictional.
Foi muito complicado, muito difícil, porque o primeiro livro, essa história do Chiquinho, já tem uma primeira parte. É como um filme, alguém já fez uma primeira parte e uma outra pessoa vai fazer uma segunda parte. É complicado fazer todo o encadeamento.
So basically, the story has like the first part. This is the sequel to almost like a sequel to Chiquinho. It's extremely complicated for one to basically get all the information to tell the story.
E eu devo dizer que o Chiquinho é um livro extremamente complicado. Carlos Almeida que o diga.
And I would like to say that Chiquinho is a book extremely complicated. Carlos Almeida can attest to that.
Em Portugal há um professor que fez uma tese de doutoramento sobre Chiquinho. E ele me disse, toma cuidado, o que vais fazer pode dar-me uma coisa horrível.
In Portugal, there was a professor that wrote his doctoral thesis on Chiquinho. He said, be very careful of what can happen.
Eu, entretanto, usei, o livro está aí, parece que deu certo, espero trazer daqui por alguns meses em inglês, vocês tirarão a conclusão se eu escrevi bem ou mal.
But nevertheless, I had the audacity to write the book, and hopefully soon I will bring you the translation in English. You will be the judge if I did a good job or not.
Sorry, it's me again. Let me just ask one more thing. And how was, I know it was just a vision and you end up getting a little bit of fiction and everything to write the book. Was the story like back then, or was the experience that you had yourself and your friends and people that live now in our generation? Is a combined thing, or it's just what he lived? Like, só que eu queria mesmo era entender que as pesquisas foram feitas com base quando o Chiquinho viveu aqui nos Estados Unidos, em Acushnet Avenue, ou foi uma combinação do que o Chiquinho viveu, o que a nossa geração vive, o que o senhor viveu, presenciou aqui nos Estados Unidos, e com a ajuda dos amigos e familiares que aqui vivem, ou foi uma coisa já um bocadinho mais complexa, uma transferência dos dois?
Foi a vivência da época. Aliás, a capa do livro é uma fotografia da Avenida Acushnet, em 1930. Claro que esta fotografia foi um bocado trabalhada.
Você falou que foi vivência da época ou não foi?
Da época.
Okay, so it was concerning basically life in that time frame. I believe it was in 50, around 1950s and 60s. Obrigado.
I'm not sure how to phrase this, but you did refer earlier to Balthazar Lopes being blocked by the Estado Novo. There was reference early in your presentation. Did he start to write, and was he blocked by the Salazar regime, or did he not even bother to try because he knew the story would never be allowed?
Você falou antes que o Baltazar começou a escrever o livro, mas você acha que ele foi bloqueado pelo regime fascista de Salazar?
Absolutamente.
Absolutely.
E Baltazar Lopes é o primeiro cabo-verdiano que teve fichas na PID em Portugal.
He was the first Cape Verdean that had basically his own archive on the PID, which was the police, the fascist police of Salazar.
E eu disse aqui, foi dito aqui, que quando ele foi pedir autorização para sair, para vir cá, para escrever o livro, a polícia política rejeitou.
And as was said here, when he sought permission for him to come here to write the book, his request was denied.
E ele já era vigiado pelo regime. Ele termina o curso em Portugal em 1929, e nesta altura já era vigiado e já tinha ficha na polícia política portuguesa.
He finished his studies in 1929 in Portugal. Since then, they basically were spying on him. And he had his own. Okay.
Ele foi perseguido até a independência nacional.
And he was persecuted until the independence, national independence.
So he was on their watch list.
Então ele estava mesmo na vista deles, não é? Estava sendo vigiado.
Absolutamente.
Sim, absolutely, yes.
Okay, we have a comment and a question from our
Temos
Zoom
comentário e uma
users.
pergunta.
The first is a comment.
Primeiro um comentário.
It comes from Tanya Alves, and she is
Tanya Alves.
saying, sorry, go ahead. She is saying, such a pleasure listening to tonight's panelists. Thank you very much for sharing.
Ela falou que é mesmo prazer entendê-lo escutar-vos nessa noite. Obrigado por partilhar.
And then our question comes from Akia de Barros Gomes. She used to be a curator here at the museum. She is asking if the novel currently is being translated into English.
A outra pessoa que trabalhava aqui, aqui no museu falou se esse aqui vai ser traduzido em inglês, esse livro. I hope so. Wow. Sem claro,
Boa tarde, primo.
Good afternoon, cousin.
My understanding is Chiquinho is part of the curriculum in Cabo Verdean schools. Is that correct?
Meu entendimento é que Chiquinho é parte do currículo escolar em Cabo Verde, isso é correto?
And that's since 1975 as well?
Desde o ano 1975 também?
So
Yes, I studied it.
the follow-up question is there some way, some plan to blend Acushnet Avenue with Chiquinho within the school systems in Cabo Verde?
Então, a minha seguinte pergunta é: existe um plano para se converger, entendeu? O livro de Chiquinho com esse aqui? Compra para o ensino Cabo Verde?
Foi agora, de 2 semanas, temos uma universidade em Cabo Verde, Jean Piaget, que tem o livro no currículo. Espero que as outras escolas tenham também.
2 weeks ago, basically, I went to a university, Jean Piaget. They have this book in their curriculum. I hope the other universities will adopt it as well.
Essa pergunta é particularmente interessante porque eu sei que há uns anos atrás, em Berkeley, na Califórnia, num curso de doutoramento, estudavam o Chiquinho.
This question is particularly interesting that this book some years ago in Berkeley, in California, someone doing this doctorate studies was studying Chiquinho.
Eu referi aqui ao Michel Laban, que é um professor catedrático da Sorbonne, que traduziu Chiquinho para ensinar na França, na Sorbonne.
And I made a reference here of Dr. Laban, which also brought this book to France to teach in Sorbonne, which is like the Harvard.
E eu tenho mais um amigo da Universidade La Sapienza de Roma, que também traduziu para italiano para ensinar em Roma.
And also I have a friend whom resides in Rome, and the University La Sapienza in Rome, University, who translated it.
Estranhamente, em Cabo Verde, Chiquinho não é assim tão estudado como devia.
Strangely, in Cape Verde, Chiquinho is not studied the way it should have been.
Hi. Então, falando crioulo. Minha Risa Ramos, estudar na Liceu Ligeiro Lima, na 1995, quando estava no nono ano. Chiquinho era um livro obrigatório para todos nós. Não tinha que ler, fazer um resumo e talvez não tinha que apresentar nós ideia e o que que nós achamos sobre o livro. É uma forma de nós estudar relativamente um pouco de cultura, aquele movimento que ele fazia parte na movimentação literária antes da independência de Cabo Verde. E depois que o senhor José Cabral mandar minha marido livre, lê boa parte. O que que eu podia dizer? Você livre, fazer uma transição daquele livro Chiquinho que nós estudamos a lembrar e nós estudamos ali em fundo na escola. Imagina uma pessoa que 14, 15 anos lê uma literatura, naquela época é difícil e para trazer aquela vivência, entender o que é ser visão na época, o que ele queria dizer naquelas entrelinhas nessa escrita, que eu vejo que as coisas que ele estava a escrever naquela idade, boca de apanhar tanto. Ler Chiquinho 20 anos depois e acabar de entender que o que ele queria passar para nós, para além da nossa cultura, o que ele queria dizer e o que ele queria transportar contra o regime que estava a viver na época, e olhar aquele livro de Bossa agora que vou escrever, que entre linhas, vou fazer bom trabalho, vou conseguir passar aquela mensagem e dizer que devia ser também parte que a escola de Cabo Verde, que poucos meninos ler, que eles deviam incluir também, que é importante para espiar duas pessoas diferentes, duas visões diferentes, mas que a licença no livro tem equivalente same. Okay? Thank you so much.
Pode resumir? This simply, I'm going to basically have to see if I can summarize it. No, I understand. All is well. All is well. So I believe in 19, okay, wait a minute, I'm going to say in English. In 1995, studying at Museology Lima in Cape Verde, and Chiquinho was part of the curriculum. We were basically incentivized or expected to read the material for us to be able to gain some knowledge concerning our identity as Cape Verdeans, and for us sometimes to be for us to be able to understand what he was trying to say concerning us, and a lot of things like written like in between the lines that weren't so obvious, but yet they were contained there in a formal, like, you know, just like kind of secretly, but there. And so I am quite pleased having read your book, and when it was sent to my husband Didino, and so I found it fascinating the way you were able to deduce everything, and for you to the way you're able to grasp in between the lines and explain the book in such a fascinating way. Let me put it that way.
Yeah, I'm just gonna, you know, I know I'm looking at the time, and time flies when we're having fun. And I'm cognizant of the time, particularly for the people online as well, that the program was to go until 7:30. So I'll probably just allow maybe one last question or comment, and before for anyone that wants to do a last comment or question.
Posso traduzir? Vou traduzir?
Não.
Sim, minha Margarete. José Cabral, antes de mais, eu queria parabenizar esse grande trabalho. Para mim é uma honra poder estar ali e assistir essa apresentação e esse livro magnífico. Eu queria perguntar o seguinte: quando é que vou descobrir a boa paixão para a escrita? E por que Chiquinho? Tendo em conta que tem outros grandes escritores também na Cabo Verde, o que é que despertou essa vontade de escrever acerca de Chiquinho? E qual é que é a boa inspiração?
José Cabral, I would basically like to congratulate you, applaud you in this fascinating work that you have done. It is an honor to be here with you. And but my question is, what motivated you to write about Chiquinho? There are other writers or great writers in Cape Verde.
Inspiração existia desde muito cedo.
The inspiration existed when I was still young.
Agora havia outras prioridades, como estudar, fazer o curso e tudo isso.
But there were other priorities as studying, getting my degree, and so forth.
Só depois de ter alguma estabilidade é que pude arranjar tempo para dedicar à escrita.
Only after having had such stability, I was able to basically have time for me to dedicate to my writings.
Porque Chiquinho, vou utilizar uma expressão do único prémio Camões cabo-verdiano, Germano Almeida,
Because it's like from Chiquinho, I'm going to use an expression with only what was it? Sorry. Okay, it's the Camões Award in Cape Verde, which is literary, the only one from Germano Almeida.
que disse que o Chiquinho é a história do povo cabo-verdiano.
He says that Chiquinho is the story or history of Cape Verdean people.
Sendo a história do povo cabo-verdiano, a história estava incompleta.
And being the story of the Cape Verdean people, the story was incomplete.
É só considerar que o Chiquinho vai até 1930.
And you have to consider that Chiquinho goes to 1930.
Então era preciso terminar a história, ou pelo menos continuar a história.
So there was a necessity to end the story or to continue the story.
Então este livro aqui é a história, Chiquinho, se quiser uma história de Cabo Verde, de 1930 a 1989.
So this book is like, so it goes from the 1930 to 1989.
Que mais uma vez agora foi referido aqui, durante a pandemia escrevi outro livro que é a continuação ainda deste aqui.
Which was alluded here during the pandemic. I wrote another book, which is the continuation of this one.
Foi, portanto, 89 até os anos 90.
Which takes place from 1989 to the 90s.
Então, somente uma tentativa de uma forma ficcionada, contar a história de Cabo Verde.
Just an attempt in a fictional story to trying to tell the history of the story of Cape Verde.
And to wrap things up, please give Bem-vindo a round of applause for an excellent job.
I thank you very much. Thank you. Okay. Just, can I say one thing?
You saved me, man.
Can I say one thing? If you like it, I did it. If you didn't like it, I did not do it.
And referring to the book, I hope you got your copies for the people in the audience. So José Cabral can give you his signature, like the autograph. And also, of course, it was mentioned here a lot, the original Chiquinho. As you know, the novel was also presented, the translation of the novel was presented first here at the Whaling Museum back in 2019. And José and I, we have a project. So we have, we're gonna bring Chiquinho and Acushnet Avenue to other Cape Verdean communities. So this coming Saturday, we are going to Pawtucket, Rhode Island, to CACD to present both books, Acushnet Avenue and the translation of Chiquinho. So for those of you online that could not be present here, so if you want, particularly the Cape Verdean community in Pawtucket, Providence, Rhode Island, can go see us from 3 to 5 this coming Saturday, the 16th. And then the following Saturday, we are going to our Cape Verdean communities in Connecticut, Waterbury on Saturday, the 23rd, and Sunday in Bridgeport, Connecticut. So please go visit us. You will enjoy it. So once again, thank you for coming, for supporting, and Thank you, my friend José Cabral, for bringing us one more jewel in the Cape Verdean history. So we are telling our Cape Verdean stories. So you are a great contributor to that story. Thank you again and have a good night.